My mother-in-law, Catherine, said some harsh things when we found out my husband would be moving abroad. She took away our house, leaving me and my daughter with nowhere to go. Feeling lost, I went to the park with my 2-year-old. Out of nowhere, police surrounded us and asked us to go to the station in the pouring rain. Shivering from the cold, I followed them. At the police station, I was surprised to find Emma, a 35-year-old woman, waiting for me. She shared her story of meeting her husband, Bob, at work, getting married, and having a daughter named Lily. Emma, Bob, Lily, and Catherine, my mother-in-law, lived together in a new apartment. They initially rented, but after Catherine's husband passed away and she had knee problems, they bought an apartment for better accessibility. They considered a house but opted for an apartment with an elevator. They made a down payment and took out a 35-year loan. Bob's company doesn't usually transfer employees often, but since we bought our house, they assured us he wouldn't be moved anytime soon. However, he ends up traveling for work almost every week to different states. With a 2-year-old daughter, I get stressed when he's away. Initially, Catherine, my mother-in-law, was helpful, but now she doesn't assist with childcare and even adds to my workload. She leaves dishes around without cleaning them, and even when I ask her to rinse them, she just apologizes without taking action. Interestingly, she rinses the dishes when Bob is around, and I only noticed recently. I used to think it was okay since she occasionally helped, but now I believe she's intentionally making things difficult for me. She also plays games, like asking if I need anything from the store and later saying she actually did. This happens frequently. Despite her knee problems, I wanted to help her, but my willingness to assist is fading. I considered talking to Bob, but I didn't want to stress him more. Catherine's behavior started when we began living together and has continued for years. A friend suggested it might be a form of bullying and advised talking to Bob. However, I feared that involving him could lead to Catherine being placed in a facility since she has no other relatives. I considered enduring it until an event changed my perspective. That day, I had intended to drop off Lily at my parents' place. They adore having Lily over for sleepovers. During our chat, they suggested I stay over sometimes too. Although I'd love to, my concern for leaving Catherine alone held me back. After a brief visit, I decided to head back to the apartment where Catherine was waiting. Upon reaching there, I realized I had left the keys at home. Despite my initial worry, I remembered Catherine was at home, so I rang the intercom. However, there was no response to the room number I dialed. Wondering if she had gone out, I decided to wait outside. 2 hours passed with no sign of Catherine. It was 7 p.m., and darkness had set in. Just then, another resident arrived, and I entered with them. Knowing Catherine rarely went out at night, I was confident she was at home. With that belief, I pressed the intercom button outside our apartment. Though I heard the ding-dong sound, there was still no response. Waiting by the door, I eventually heard a faint sound from inside, confirming Catherine's presence. Despite trying the intercom several times, she refused to come out. Feeling defeated, I spent the night at a nearby motel, planning to return when Bob came back from his business trip. What happened? Out shopping, actually. I explained to Bob that Catherine had locked me out. He was rightfully upset on my behalf, but Catherine casually attributed it to her hearing loss, saying, "Maybe I didn't hear because of my hearing. I'm getting old, you know," with a hidden smirk. Glad to be back inside, I grabbed my keys and went to pick up Lily from my parents' house. When I discussed the situation with them, they'd offered support, saying, "Sounds like she's giving you a hard time. If it becomes too much, you're always welcome back here. Remember, you're our precious daughter." Their comforting words brought tears, but I quickly wiped them away in front of Lily and headed home. Things were quiet with Catherine for a while, but suddenly, Bob's permanent international transfer was confirmed. Despite just buying a place, he asked, "What do you think about staying in the U.S.? Can you handle living with my mom?" Unable to answer immediately, considering potential stress for Lily, I eventually decided it would be best for us to stay in the U.S. Shortly after this decision, Bob had to leave for Europe. Though he was concerned, work kept him occupied, so the life of me, Lily, and Catherine was about to begin. Living with Catherine took a turn for the worse once Bob left for Europe. Her attitude changed drastically. On a stormy day, Catherine surprised me with a bombshell. "Now that Bob's gone, wouldn't it be better if you and Lily move out?" Shocked, I asked for clarification, but she insisted. "I'll take over. I can't relax with strangers in the house. Please leave right now." I couldn't believe her audacity. While it's true we aren't blood relatives, I've always tried to make our living together comfortable, treating her like family. Yet to Catherine, it seemed we were merely an afterthought. Considering going back to my parents' place, Catherine urged me to leave immediately. Before I knew it, Lily and I were thrown out, dressed as we were. Despite my pleas, Catherine refused to open the door. Lost and confused, I carried Lily through the pouring rain to a nearby park, hoping its roof would offer some shelter. Ideally, I would have checked into a motel or returned to my parents' place. But I left my wallet and phone inside the house. Feeling helpless, I sat in the park, trying to figure out our next move. Time passed in the torrential downpour, and overwhelmed by fatigue and cold, I began to doze off. It was dark, and despite the summer, the cold was biting. As bad as things were, the only option seemed to be a 3-hour walk to my parents' home. While pondering our situation, I noticed 2 distant lights approaching through the rain. Despite the obscured visibility, I could tell they were police officers. Hoping for help, one of them called out, "Are you Emma? And is this little one Lily?" Surprised they knew our names, I weakly confirmed, "Yes, that's us." The officer then requested, "Please come to the station with us." Perplexed, I questioned, "Why the police station?" Unsure if something was wrong, I complied as they urged Lily and me into the patrol car. We were freezing, but the officers had brought large towels and assured us, "You might need these. We've got spare clothes at the station for you." Curious about how they knew about us and the reason for heading to the police station, I asked, "How did you know where to find us?" Their response was, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon dozed off and woke up to find we had arrived at the police station. Inside, to my surprise, I saw Catherine and my uncle. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" He explained that Bob had contacted him. "Bob suspected you might be having issues with his mom, and since he's abroad, he wanted me to keep an eye on things for him." My uncle shared that Bob had talked to him about this issue previously, asking him to keep an eye on things since he couldn't be there himself due to being overseas. He had seen us in the rain earlier and considered taking us in, but Catherine's extreme behavior prompted him to report it to the police. That's how the officers knew our location and came to our aid. Catherine, sitting on a sofa at the police station, glared at me, seemingly unaware of the reason for her presence. She argued, "Why do I have to be here? I have a bad knee. If Bob were here, this wouldn't be happening." Despite her protests, the situation arose from Bob seeking my uncle's help. In discussions with the police, the possibility of legal implications emerged, leading to the suggestion that I consider hiring an attorney. Catherine dismissed it, saying, "An attorney? That's an overreaction. I just locked the door, that's all. I didn't do anything else." My uncle defended us, highlighting the severity of Catherine throwing us out in torrential rain. He asserted that, in fact, I was the rightful owner of the house. Catherine believed Bob was the owner, but she was mistaken. My uncle, running a real estate business, had arranged a great deal on a condo for us, recommended by Bob. The property was put under my name, a decision I had been indifferent about initially but now appreciated. Following my uncle's counsel, I opted to hire a lawyer. The legal expert conveyed that evicting Catherine would pose challenges, suggesting that placing her in a care facility might be the most feasible solution. Upon learning this, I promptly called Bob to provide an update. Bob, caught off guard by the escalation of the issue, expressed his desire to return from Japan for a thorough discussion. He mentioned considering the option of placing Catherine in a facility. Unaware of these developments, Catherine, still at the police station, casually snacked on crackers. Unable to return home with her, I decided to seek refuge at my parents' place until Bob's return. With Bob expected back in a week, I had some time to contemplate our next steps. If Bob didn't stand by me, divorce seemed like the only recourse. Regret lingered, wishing I had sought advice sooner. A week later, Bob returned from Europe, and I moved back home from my parents' place. Due to the urgency of his return, Bob had limited time in Japan before going back to Europe, so we needed to discuss our next steps. I heard some things from Emma's uncle. Is all of that true? Catherine stubbornly denied any wrongdoing, claiming it was all lies and that I was plotting to evict her. Surprisingly, Bob, who should have supported me, seemed inclined to consider Catherine's perspective. Do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? He asked Catherine. Evidence? Of course not, she replied. Bob then turned to me, asking if I had any evidence. Being busy with work, I hadn't been able to keep a close eye on things, but I handed Bob a voice recorder I had with me. What's this? When Bob played it, he heard recordings of Catherine not only evicting me, but also frequently berating me, calling me a worthless wife. In response, Catherine quickly defended herself, claiming it was taken out of context. Despite Catherine's attempt to downplay her actions, a barrage of recorded verbal abuses played from the voice recorder, revealing numerous instances, some of which weren't even captured. Bob's hand, holding the voice recorder, trembled with tension and anger. Catherine, looking guilt-ridden, claimed, "Everyone has their moments, right?" I was just frustrated at that time, but it was just this once. However, the evidence spoke volumes. When Bob questioned her, she remained silent, and as he asserted the need to protect me and Lily, Catherine, probably witnessing this side of Bob for the first time, appeared frightened and speechless. Discussions continued until Bob's return to Europe. I made it clear that I couldn't continue living with Catherine, especially with Lily in the picture, and Bob seemed to share my sentiment, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Catherine strongly opposed the idea, complicating the discussions. Despite her resistance, I decided to sell the house. You can't stay here anymore. If you don't want the facility, you'll need to find another place. Catherine resisted, refusing to allow the sale of the house, but it was a tough decision to accommodate. Lily and I had resolved to move to Europe, a choice influenced by Bob's regret for not being more present for his family. Though hesitant about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us provided reassurance. Additionally, Lily, being only 2 years old, would benefit from practicing her communication skills in Europe. Therefore, selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, became the only viable option. Leaving it as it was meant Catherine would have to cover the mortgage, an unrealistic expectation given her fixed income. Considering her future needs, someone should be available to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine staunchly refused to move into a facility. Consequently, we had to take the step of placing her there against her will. I'm sorry, but I've got to head back to Europe. Could you handle any required procedures here? Bob inquired before his departure. With assistance from those around me, I successfully completed the necessary steps for Catherine's admission into the facility. The facility staff kept me informed about her condition, and unfortunately, she wasn't faring well. It would have been different if she were just feeling down, but it appeared she was causing trouble for others in the facility. Before leaving for Europe, I visited her to check on her well-being. However, she lashed out, exclaiming, "What's the big idea? Why have you locked me up in this place?" Her frustrations extended to the staff, complaining about the food, discomfort of the beds, and snide remarks from other residents. When I apologized to the staff, they were understanding. "It's all good," one of them reassured me. "We encounter this behavior often. Leave it to us. We'll keep you updated, and if anything arises, we'll give you a call, so don't worry." Despite enduring harassment from Catherine during our time living together, I couldn't shake off my worries as I headed to Europe. Upon reaching Paris, Bob greeted me at the airport, and we made our way to the apartment we had rented. While it's true that rents in Paris are often higher than in Texas, Bob's housing allowance from the company proved fortunate, allowing us to find a spacious and affordable place. Our neighbors in the building have been incredibly friendly and kind, even though my French isn't fluent. Just yesterday, a neighbor shared wine and cheese, and I reciprocated with some mac and cheese. Meanwhile, I'm gradually learning French alongside my daughter Lily, recognizing the limitations of self-study. I've also enrolled in a language school where I've made friends with fellow Americans new to France. Life in Paris is truly enjoyable. Back in the States, my constant concern for Catherine often hindered my enjoyment during outings with friends. However, here in Paris, I can savor leisurely lunches without such worries. The only current concern is Lily, who is still too young for kindergarten. Typically, children here start kindergarten at 5, so I hope Lily picks up enough French by then. Thankfully, she seems to be catching on quickly. Once Lily starts preschool, I'm contemplating getting a job. Although Bob is okay with me staying at home, the experience of living in Paris has sparked a desire to explore more opportunities. Making friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe, I learned there might be a job opportunity there. The cafe is not only popular among the American community, but many customers are also learning English. While challenges may arise, our communication has improved since coming to France. I feel more confident expressing my feelings, and no matter what lies ahead, I believe we'll face it as a family. Right now, I'm experiencing a level of happiness I've never felt before.